Hi there. So, my name is Melanie Rivera, and if you are here, you are looking to hear about how to get your next raise or promotion a way that feels simpler, more effective, more intuitive, less salesy or schmoozy, and that you can get started with right away. If you're here for something else, you're in the wrong place, my friend. So, I want to tell you a little bit about me, just enough that you know that I'm not blowing hot air here, that I actually have some experience to share with you. So that's me. I am Melanie Rivera. I'm a first generation Latina college grad, and I got to my first executive role at 30 as the head of people operations for DonorsChoose.org, which was later named one of Fast Company's most innovative companies in the world. I'm experienced as an HR expert, an executive team leader, a management coach and trainer, and a career coach. And my life's work specifically is to help people at the margins, people who the odds say will not get to leadership roles, leapfrog the bias that prevents us from unlocking real career opportunity. So I love talking about raises. I love talking about promotions. I love talking about becoming a manager, becoming a C-suite leader, and what are the practical steps that have been proven to work for people who typically don't make it into those slots. And to date, I've helped dozens land promotions, unlock raises, not just any raises, really good raises, and improve their lives at work. And right now, I'm here to make a difference for you. So here's our agenda, friends. I just did the quick welcome and purpose setting for our time. I now want to go into what doesn't work and a better way forward. And then once we talk about that, I'm going to talk about the 3 steps that I want you to really focus on over the next 6 to 8 months in order to queue up your next promotion or raise. For some of you that have been doing great work for longer than that and who've been in your current role for a while, you may be able to work these in 3 months. For some of you, you might be right on the cusp of asking for a raise right now, and you may only want to focus on step 2 and step 3. So you can feel free to use any and all. Just make it useful for you. And just know that your timeline may vary depending on where you are in your career, the kind of results you're getting already, and the organizational context you're working in. And then at the end, I'm going to tell you more about an offer that I have right now. It's for 8 women or people of color or others who feel at the margins. You could be a member of the LGBTQ community. You could be someone who's a first generation college grad or otherwise on the margin in your organization and want some help busting through the odds to get to your next executive or manager role or your next promotion or raise. All right, so let's get started. So I am so happy you're here. So many people aren't paid their worth at work. And if that's you, we want to work to change that starting today. So let's get your money. So my friends, you're here because you feel like this, many of us. It's not working. What you're doing right now is not enough to get you the money that you need, or the promotion that you need, or the work environment that you need. And I want to just applaud you for being real about that. There are so many people who just go through the motions, keep doing same old, even though they know that where they are right now is not where they should be. So congrats for that, and now let's deal with it. So if you're feeling this frustrated, I'm guessing you're probably doing some of the following things. So you might be letting your work speak for itself, keeping your head down and just getting the work done and waiting for someone to notice you. And no one is. And maybe people are applauding your work. They're saying you're such a hard worker. We really value you on the team. You're so great. And yet when it's raise time, it's crickets. Nobody's out there fighting for you to get a disproportional raise or rewarding you for taking on extra work when a colleague leaves. And this is because letting your work speak for itself does not work for people at the margins. It may work for someone who is very similar to their boss, where the boss may experience a little bit of like-me bias, where they think that they have some affinity with this person, and so maybe they look out for them, they give them special opportunities. But if you're at the margins, chances are letting your work speak for itself won't be enough to get you noticed and get you promoted. Another thing that doesn't work, doing more than everyone else. So our instinct sometimes, particularly, I'll speak as a woman of color in a mostly white ID context, the nonprofit sector, where there are lots of white women, and I was a woman of color. I was also a little bit young for my level in the organization. I just thought if I just did everything, just worked harder, worked more than everybody else, that would be enough. And again, just like letting your work speak for yourself, it is not enough. And what I've seen is that often people who just do everything get slated as really good worker bees, but not strategic, not leader material. And so sometimes doing more than everyone else isn't just going to keep you standing still. It will be a hindrance to your ability to move ahead. Here's another thing that doesn't work: suffering in silence or seething in silence. When you've asked for a promotion, nobody heard you, and so you're just seething, you're just boiling over, and you're just waiting and waiting and waiting, and just getting angrier and angrier, or you just leave because you don't think it can happen for you. That does not work, my friends. Another thing that doesn't work are half requests. Have you ever done this where you sort of ask for a raise, but your manager isn't really sure what happened? You're not sure what happened. You sort of ask like, hey, I'd really like to make more money. What does that look like? And it's not firm and it's not clear. It's not a specific amount of money. There's no evidence behind it. That doesn't work. And what typically happens there is you feel awkward. They feel awkward. You don't know how to have the conversation. It's just not good for anyone. Comparison asks. That's another thing that doesn't work. Sally makes 45, I should make 45. And that's really undermining for you for a number of reasons. One, because you're tiering your compensation potential to somebody else. Two, because you shouldn't know what other people make according to your manager, even though the truth is everybody talks. Managers never love hearing that you know what other people make. It's like a ding against you. It shouldn't be, and yet it is, unless your organization makes salaries really transparent in public, which very few do. And then the last piece is it doesn't let you be able to negotiate your percentage based on the value you bring. It tiers you to what's possible for others. So let's say Sally got a 3% raise and you frankly deserve a 7% raise. Like if you tier yourself to Sally, then you'll be tiered to Sally from here on forward. You may not want to do that. And lastly, waiting for your performance review does not work. I'm a leader and I've been in organizations' budget cycles for many years. And what I'll tell you is budget cycles do not line up with the performance review cycle. Here's what I mean. If you wait till your performance review to ask for a raise, they likely will have already set the budget for the following year by the time of your performance review. So you need to be working out of cycle to get an out of cycle raise or promotion. And that's the best way to unlock real money, particularly if you feel like you've been waiting for a while and some of this other stuff is not working. So more importantly, though, the headline is these tactics don't work because there are a couple principles operating in our workforce that really hinder people at the margins. The first one is that race and gender bias is real, friends, even with well-meaning managers, even with managers of the same race, of the same gender. We're still all in the pickle juice together. And what the data tells us is that women of color, for example, typically make 55 cents on every dollar that a white man makes. White women maybe make 73 cents on every dollar. So that gender bias really does put downward pressure on what you can earn unless you do something different than what the majority does. The same is true of race. So if you talk about leadership roles, 4% of senior most leadership roles are occupied by women of color. And that just goes down from the original sort of entry-level manager roles where women of color have 12 to 14%. Then at the more senior manager roles, it goes down to 8%. Senior most manager roles, it goes to 4%. So as you go higher, the amount of women in leadership that are women of color goes down, down, down. And so race bias really is real. The data is bearing that out. So we have to do something different if we want to operate against the bias. If we want to swim upstream and get outsized results and beat the odds, we've got to do different. The other reason these tactics don't work is because the truth is managers are just people. And so if they know somebody's going to be a squeaky wheel, give them a hard time about a raise, and they've been doing it all year, and they've only got 4% to give, they may give it to the squeaky wheel high performer as opposed to the church mouse quiet high performer. And so you may have people on your team advocating for themselves that are taking your raise from you, and they don't even deserve it. But because you're not asking, or you're not asking properly, you're not even putting yourself in position to be considered. And that's a mess. Let's not do that. Here's another thing, and this is specific to startups and it's specific to nonprofits. So if you don't work in nonprofits or in startups, this may not be true of you, but I want to name it anyway because enough of us do. This is also true of higher ed, education broadly. So there's this lie that exists that keeps women of color and people at the margins down. And what it says is that if you care about the mission, you won't trip about your compensation. So that it puts like mission alignment, how much you're passionate about the cause in opposition to your quality of life, your boundaries, your time and flexibility at work, benefits, compensation, as if you can't have both. And I want to completely flip the script on that. If you are passionate about the mission of the place you work, that's awesome. And you can be super passionate and well compensated. Super passionate and have boundaries around your time. Those things can coexist, and they should. And so if you're subscribing to this mission fallacy, you may feel bad asking for a raise because you're like, we could really use the money in the service of the mission, or I know everybody's underpaid, da-da-da. Yeah, okay. And your CEO is making probably a bunch more money than you. So if there is some money that can be paid and you're doing great work in the organization, you deserve to ask. And so I want to just invite you to disregard this mission fallacy that keeps a lot of people at the margins struggling to make ends meet when their peers that identify differently don't have the same struggles. And then the last bit that I'll share is going to sound a little pessimistic, but I promise you, I'm a manager too. So I'm not trying to throw shade at any manager. But the truth is, as managers, we instinctively prioritize frugality over fairness. Here's what I mean. If I've got someone who's going to make me 5 grapes an hour and only ask for $2 to pay, or if someone who will only make me 2 grapes an hour and ask for $10 of pay, every day of the week, I'm going to choose the 5 grapes person because I'm instinctively trying to stretch my resources further. Well, how does that apply to you? If your manager believes they can get you to do your job for $50,000 a year, they have no incentive to pay you $55,000, not if they think you're realistically going to stay, right? And so unless we sort of give them some awareness that we expect to be paid at the rate of the value we deliver, the instinct, the management bias is going to be to get the most results for the least price, especially in the nonprofit sector, in government, and other places where, we're taught to do more with less. And government may be a little different actually because of pay scales. But in general, managers are taught to do more with less. And one of the ways they do that is by putting downward pressure on salaries. So then what does work? Well, there is a better way. And Madam C.J. Walker's got it for us. She said, I had to make my own living and my own opportunity, but I made it. Don't sit down and wait for the opportunities to come. Get up and make them. I hear you, Madam C.J. Walker. So what does that mean for us? That means that if you're a person who identifies as someone at the margins, a person of color in the LGBTQ community, someone who's a first-generation college grad or a woman in a male-dominated field or organization, you may have to do things differently and make your own opportunity. And that's what we're going to talk about now. So here's my M-cubed method. So I want you to first focus on mastery. That is getting bananas talented at your job, being so good at it that it is table stakes. You are ready for a promotion. Nobody is going to split hairs over your performance. You are crushing the game. And we'll talk about what that looks like. Once you've done that, I want you to create a string of wins. That's your momentum. That is the story in the organization about you being a star. So for example, when I was moving into my VP role, I had at my back the wins of having turned around a team and gotten some wins for the organization in terms of us being a best place to work, and winning one award there, and helping with an big office transformation. And so all of those wins helped to position me for a role on the executive team. And then lastly, I'm going to talk to you about managing up, which is what do you do to help your manager help you succeed? How do you build the relationship that's going to open doors for you and see this process through until you get the money or the promotion that you've earned? So it seems simple, but are you doing it though? I bet you're not. So let's talk about each of these 3 steps and what your next steps are within each one. And then we'll move on to see what's next. So mastery. This is a picture of Serena Williams, who is a star at mastery. And what's my point? My point is that getting really good at what you do is the prerequisite for negotiating an excellent raise or becoming the obvious choice for your next promotion. If you're not really good at what you do, especially if you're a person at the margins, it's very hard to get an outsized raise or to be paid at the very top of your class. So you've got to deliver the goods, my friend. And I'm going to tell you what that looks like. So as a manager, when I think of somebody who is demonstrating mastery, I'm thinking of someone who knows their work, who knows what it takes to ace their job, that how I'm defining success for them. They excel at the fundamentals. They consistently produce strong work. They know the timelines, the issues, how their work impacts other teams. They are experts at their day-to-day job. They've built the relationships that they need to do their job well. So that's their immediate stakeholders, their reputation in the organization and externally. They're using their emotional intelligence to solve problems and negotiate conflict with their stakeholders skillfully, especially across lines of difference. So the tricky issues where race and class and other things are concerned. And then lastly, people who demonstrate mastery continuously level up. They go beyond the obvious to the next level of their job. They see around the curve and anticipate problems. They suggest suggestions beyond their job that help the broader team. And they're always asking for feedback and always implementing it. So if you're doing those three things, if you know your work deeply, if you have a strong cadre of people around the work that support you and that you work well with, and if you're consistently leveling up your skills, then you're demonstrating mastery. So in knowing the work, you might ask yourself questions like this. How knowledgeable are you about the key elements of your job? How consistently do you deliver superb work? And where are your biggest growth edges? What do you need to learn or to improve? Under building the relationships, you might ask yourself, which colleagues and teams are the most important to my success at work? And how's my reputation with them? Then you could make a plan to strengthen the respect, trust, and collaboration you have. And then within leveling up, of course, you've got to be thinking about where you can contribute even more value in your role. What key skills your team is deficient in that you could be the one to learn. And how you could suggest and implement solutions that would solve persistent challenges, really prevalent ones that keep popping up in your role or on your team. Make sense? So mastery, my friends, is table stakes. If you don't got mastery, don't even continue this PowerPoint, go get some. But if you do feel like you're good at your job, that's really the foundation for the next step here. So what I want you to do after you've demonstrated mastery is build some momentum, and that's Queen Bee, Beyonce right there. Well, why do I bring up Beyonce? Because Beyonce right now is coasting on a sea of momentum. At the time of this recording, she just came out of releasing Homecoming on Netflix. She had an amazing Coachella performance this summer, and she's had back-to-back-to-back victories in her career. And so as a result, she is riding this momentum, which keeps getting her better and better opportunities. So what does that mean for you? You need to build the string of wins within your organization you need in order to become the obvious choice. So when you keep winning, when every time somebody hears your name, it's associated to a breakthrough in business or a goal that you've met, or your team succeeding in providing excellent customer service, this makes you the obvious choice for new career opportunities. And this is especially true in an org where you're new to your role, new to the level of your role, so if you got promoted, or if you're at the margins. Let's make this practical. When I'm a manager thinking about momentum, I'm thinking, what is the story I have in my head about you? Are you helping to influence that story? And is that story the story that tells me that it's obvious it's time for you to get promoted? Or is that story a little bit trickier? And so part of what I need you to do, as if I were your manager and trying to help you with this momentum, is that you need to be deciding what the wins are that you're trying to get in the organization that you think will have real impact. You got to think about how to make those wins visible to the team. And how do you get in front of setbacks and challenges before they happen to preserve trust and keep your narrative strong? You also want to think about your hype team. So building relationships with others who will shout you out, that will champion your success, that will put your name in other people's ears. Frequently shouting out those same people who are doing exceptional work on and off your team. And even sharing your lessons learned freely, especially when you've got to win, so that you're adding value to people and building that hype team. And then lastly, I want you to be fanning the flame. I want you to build processes, routines that keep your winning streak strong. You want practices to rebound quickly when you fail. You want to inspire yourself consistently for greater success by having disciplines around how you develop professionally, how you retreat and recharge, how you set goals every quarter and evaluate your goals. You want to keep that flame of success alive. So we've talked about mastery, and now we just talked about momentum. What kinds of questions do you ask yourself to see where your momentum is? Well, so within writing the narrative, maybe a question you might ask is, what mechanisms have you developed to communicate about your successes to your manager and to others? And how clear are you on your must-wins this year? Have you shared them with your manager? Are they in agreement? Are they important enough that they would help to write this narrative? And if you hit snags along the way, how will you keep your narrative strong? How will you rebound quickly from those mistakes? In the hype team department, do you have a community of high-performing peers that you can go to for support, for advice, for shout-outs? If not, how might you create one? Are you the kind of person who throws shine at others when they deserve it? Do you share their wins with others? And do people share your wins? And then lastly, are you adding value to others even when you don't need to? Are you sharing tools and strategies that work for you with the intention to help them succeed? Because nothing builds a hype team like helping others. And then lastly, are you fanning the flame of your success? How strong are your daily disciplines? Are you succeeding because of them or in spite of them? How strong are your productivity systems? How will you keep the flame going when setbacks hit? And are you investing the time to build skills that will help you continue to win? All of these are important questions to ask yourself in that momentum bucket in order to shore up your strategy there. So we've talked about mastery, we've talked about momentum, and if you can get past these two steps, you're almost in the clear, but not yet. You've got one more to go. This photo is of a business book writer, Patty Azzarello, who's an amazing author and thought leader. And she's famous for talking about managing up. And what managing up is working with your manager to be successful in your role. It's building a relationship to get what you need from your manager and to be a great asset to them. So once you've laid the foundation for your career move, it's time to get your manager on board. Having them as an ally will make or break your next promotion or raise. And so I'm going to talk to you about some concrete ways to get them on board. So when I think about managing up personally, the first thing I always do when I'm working with a new manager is get to know what moves them. So bosses are just people, just like anybody. Certain things motivate them and other things don't. So for example, I once worked for a chief operating officer who was really motivated by cost and risk. So he wanted to know, how expensive was this and is there any danger? I've also worked for managers that were really motivated by the impact on the mission, or really motivated by, efficiency and effectiveness. So listen to what words they use to persuade others about the things they work on. Those are likely things that move them as well. And it's your job to learn what moves them. Once you do know what they care about, it's your job to communicate your case for a promotion or a raise in a way that compels them. It's not their job to just get it. You've got to help them get it. So for example, if I'm talking to that manager that cares about cost and risk, you can talk about the cost of succession planning if this role changes and I'm out of here in a couple years, right? And so it does make sense to create a career path for me here because we want to keep this role filled and we want to keep the momentum going. There I married a very small cost relatively to avoiding risk. We want to be careful to think about how they best process information too. So for example, I once asked for a raise from someone who really did need to see everything in writing. And so being able to give them all the information up front queued up a much more successful conversation than if I just rolled up on them and spoke to them orally. After you learn what moves them, you've got to nurture candor and trust, not just about the raise, but just about the relationship. Because if you and your manager can communicate honestly from a place of trust, they'll tell you the truth about what it will take to win a raise, or if you're not ready. And that's an important piece of information to know as well. So one of the ways you can nurture this candor and trust is that you can show your manager that you are mature and you can handle truth before this conversation. So if every time they give you feedback, you break down crying, you get offended, then they're not going to tell you they won't ask for a raise for you. They just won't do it. And so it's much better for you to cultivate a relationship where they trust your maturity and believe that you'll be able to handle their truth. And then they can be direct with you about your likelihood of getting a raise or a promotion. And this last shift is the most complicated one yet. A lot of times when people are advocating for themselves, particularly if they're the only Black woman or the only Latino man or the only person of color in general or LGBTQ member on their team, like there's this adversarial nature of like, I'm advocating for myself as a person of color that puts me as an adversary to my boss who may identify differently than I do. And that's a mistake. Instead, I want you to consider your boss your promotion coach or your raise coach. And so you're giving them the information and trying to get their advice and their coaching so that they become your ally, not your opponent. And lastly, you want to project manage the parts of the process that you can. So give them a rock solid case, evidence, salary data, etc. Stuff that's easy for them to share with their boss. Ask in advance what data points would be helpful to have a conversation about compensation. And ask about next steps and timeline without being pushy. And that's really important. You don't want this to feel like a negative experience for them. You want to come across as organized and helpful, not pushy, not too aggressive, but still moving the ball forward. So here's some questions you might ask yourself in the learning what moves them bucket. How long have you been working with your boss? And in that time, have you taken the time to get to know how they make decisions, what they care about? What is the best way to influence them? And if you have, are you crafting your promotion and or raise conversation with these interests in mind? If not, what would it look like to do that? In terms of nurturing candor and trust, how trusting is your relationship with your manager? Would they tell you the truth if you weren't ready for a promotion or if they weren't ready to support you? If not, how might you build a more trusting relationship where they could tell you that directly? And how have you responded to tough feedback from your manager in the past? Do they think you can take their feedback? Because that's going to be an important step to them telling you the truth about whether or not you really have a chance at this raise or promotion. And lastly, in the project managing the parts you can bucket, how rock solid is the case you have for your promotion? Is it a little shaky? Have you done your homework? If not, how can you start doing your homework? Have you sought their input and how you make the case to them? Have you thought about how you will ask about next steps and timeline without being pushy? For this particular step, if you know someone who's very good at influencing your boss and they're a good friend, maybe you ask them, like, what do they think about when they're talking to your boss about an idea? How do they influence them to make your pitch even more compelling? So I've talked to you about my 3 M's. And so there's some of you here that I bet are saying like, you know what, I totally got this. I'm ready to move. I'm ready to hit the ground running. All I needed to do was hear about momentum, Mel, and I've got this. And if that's you, boom, go get it. Go get that money. I am here for you. I am cheering you on. I am so excited. Go get it. But more likely, my experience coaching dozens and dozens of mid-career people, early career people, some like, junior C-suite people, is that concepts aren't enough to get the results you need when it comes to getting a raise or promotion, particularly if you're a person at the margins in your organization. And so if that's you, and you're serious, I mean, like not just thinking about a raise, but very, very serious about making it happen in 6, 8, maybe 12 months, I want to help you do something right now that's going to move you forward toward that aim. But before I do, I want to tell you a quick story. So I love my family, and I have one extended family member who is an incredible worker. She's a great mom. She's just a fantastic woman. And we had a conversation, several conversations actually, it wasn't just one, about her situation at work. And here was the situation. She loved her job. Her boss was great. Her colleagues were fine. The work was interesting. But the truth is she wasn't making what she was worth. And part of that had to do with the geography, but part of that had to do with the fact that her boss was very good at evading her requests for a raise. So we talked about what she might do in the past, but the advice wasn't concrete enough. It was kind of like this presentation. It was really conceptual. What she needed was to know exactly what to do, exactly what to say for the best chance of success. So one day, frankly, we were both frustrated that her boss had evaded her one more time. And so rather than just give her concepts that had worked for me, I literally gave her a couple things she might say. She chose one of them, and in one conversation, queued up a $3,000 raise. It didn't happen, in that exact second, but he gave some verbal nodding and some assent to like, yep, this makes sense. And then within a few months, she had that $3,000 in her salary that was beginning to hit her paychecks. And the cool thing about that is that 15-minute conversation, it didn't just make her $3,000 that year. It made her $3,000 that year and the next year and the next year, right? Because when money is added to your salary, you don't just feel it once. You feel it over and over and over again every single year you work in that company. And honestly, if she hadn't had that conversation and we hadn't talked about that sentence string she might try, who knows how long it would have taken for her to figure out how to get around her boss. What probably would have happened is in a year she would have left because she wouldn't have been able to figure it out. And he's a great guy and it's a great company and she loved working there, gives her lots of flexibility. So it would have been a real shame for her to lose that opportunity simply because she wasn't able to ask for a raise in a way that would be effective. So why do I share that? Well, because I think a lot of us feel like we should manage our careers ourselves, like that it's something that if we're diligent, if we're smart, we should be able to figure this out. And I want to tell you that those of us who've gotten ahead more quickly than others, we've had help. So where careers are concerned, it's not weakness to get help, but it is bananagrams to recreate the wheel when others have already bumped their heads to figure this stuff out. People like me, people like my cousin, people like lots of other people who've over the years had to struggle to be the folks at the margins who are trying to figure out how to get this raise stuff done. And for a lot of us who've succeeded, it's been because a mentor has pulled us aside and told us what to do. And that's who I want to be for you. So if you feel you need more support to act on what you've learned in this presentation, now's your chance. So here's an offer. You can spend 4 hours with me planning your next promotion. I'm going to be pulling a very small group of women together, or people of color, LGBTQ community members, or anyone else who identifies as being at the margins of their organization. You're welcome to apply, and if you participate, what it's going to be is it's a structured process I've used personally to help land a promotion/raise that was outsized, that was pretty sizable. And so I want to walk you through that exact process together. It's going to be about 4 hours. It's going to be virtual, so you don't have to spend any money to get there. And it will be done via Zoom. So I want to give you 2 ways that you could sign up. It's on July 6th. It's a 4-hour online intensive. It'll probably be from 10 to 2. And you can either sign up by texting get paid to 345-345, or I'll try to put a link in the chat box. Let me just get there really quickly and see if I can do that. It probably is just easiest though to just text get paid to 345-345. When you do that, you're not going to be added to my email list. I promise. All that's going to happen is one time you're going to get a link. It's going to confirm and say, hey, you signed up for this. And then you're going to get a link, and I'm not going to reply to you ever again. It's just going to be that one link to learn more about this event and to sign up if you're interested. So given the content it requires a pretty small group and the existing signups I already have, slots are limited. So I have 8 left specifically. So you want to sign up now by texting get paid to 345-345. The link is actually kind of unwieldy. So I'd much prefer you text that. I'll send the link to your phone. You can go online there. So text get paid to 345345. You won't be added to my email list. Nothing will happen. You'll just get a link that will let you sign up for this 4-hour online intensive. I would say, since it's July 6th, time is of the essence, and try to sign up quickly to get one of those last 8 slots. It has been my pleasure helping you to think about your promotion and raise potential over the next 6, 8, 12 months. What I will say, in having coached dozens of people, is that if you don't act right away, you're not going to do it. And so putting those 4 hours on the calendar for you, it may just be protecting the time that makes the difference, or it may be the actual strategies I give, which I know work. But either way, it's a great investment of time. It's not that expensive. And for the amount of money that you could make in a raise in 1 year that keeps paying you year after year, it's frankly a super bargain. So look forward to hearing from you. And if you have questions in the meantime, you can email me directly at Melanie, MELANIE, @breaker28.com. Thanks again. Hope you enjoyed this.